The idea of slowing down the aging process and living healthier, more productive lives is hugely appealing. It's led to a growing trend for people looking to take control of their own biology, optimizing their bodies and minds through biohacking. But how safe and ethical is it? And are there more natural ways of boosting your biology? In this film, we're going to hear from both the biohackers trying to push human health and well-being to its limits, and those taking more traditional scientific approaches. Dave Asprey is an American entrepreneur and the self-described father of biohacking.
I fully expect, and this is not a made-up number, to live to at least 180 years old, unless something like a tree falling on me takes me out. A lot of people ask, can we really hack the aging process? And we are now on the cusp with literally about 50 different innovations to control biology of aging coming online all at the same time. And I have 100% certainty that within a few years, our new innovations that come in happen faster than our aging.
It's certainly true that the scientific understanding of aging has progressed rapidly in recent decades. But why is that?
I think one of the really big surprises that's come along about aging is how malleable it is. Especially in animals. And I think what's come as a huge surprise is that sometimes the same thing will extend the healthy lifespan of a fly, but also of a mouse. And what that's telling us, of course, is that some of the underlying mechanisms of aging that we're interfering with are in common between these animals. So I think that's why aging has opened up really to research in recent years, is the discovery that we can use these short-lived things where we can get the answers more quickly to understand what's going on in the creatures that we really care about, particularly ourselves.
As the science of aging and longevity becomes more advanced, we're learning how to not just slow down gradually the effects of aging, but truly reverse many aspects of aging. We believe the cells in our bodies have youthful information when we're born, and over time they lose that information. We've discovered that there's information in the cell to reset the system in the way that you could reboot a computer with fresh software. For example, we've recently reprogrammed the eye of an old mouse to be young again, and those old mice get their vision back. And that's just the beginning, I believe, of being able to turn the clock back, literally, to make younger tissues in the body.
There are several companies within the growing longevity industry who are working on developing regenerative therapies to combat the diseases of aging. One such company is Elevian, who are investigating how a protein found in young blood might have surprising regenerative capabilities.
Our co-founders were part of a team that really made some important discoveries that young blood can rejuvenate aged animals, and vice versa. Aged blood can accelerate aging in young animals. And out of that work, they identified this little known factor called GDF11 that decreases with age. And what we and other labs have now found is that very similar dose range of GDF11 can be used to treat and prevent dozens of age-related diseases.
This research, which originally began on mice, is still in its early preclinical stage. Any drug development process which arises from it has to be thorough, which can take years. Elevian estimate that they are about a year away from beginning human clinical trials. For those impatient to slow down their aging process and not keen to take part in experimental trials, there are steps that people can take in their daily lives.
In many ways, our fate during aging is in our own hands already. I mean, it's really clear that if you can, you should take as much exercise as is healthy, and also eat a healthy diet and not eat too much.
Dr. David Sinclair believes certain stresses on the body can actually be good for longevity.
If you do the things that trick the body into thinking times could be tough, short bouts of skipping meals, so hunger, fasting, but also losing your breath, so running on a treadmill, doing a lot of heavy weight lifting. We also think that these are another way to promote the body's defenses, and the combination of all of those things actually is known to extend lifespan by keeping people healthier for longer.
Some biohackers are determined to go further and are willing to trial experimental therapies on their own bodies.
I decided that I wanted to try every extreme intervention I could, the stuff that billionaires are doing, so that I could write about it and so that I could benefit from it. I've had my bone marrow taken out, spun down to get stem cells, and reintroduce the stem cells throughout my body. There's 150 supplements a day that are part of my regimen, but no one really needs to do that. I am a guinea pig to see which ones work, and I'm constantly experimenting.
There are different degrees of how far people want to go to slow down their aging process. The most advanced I've ever seen, if you want to call it advanced, was there are a few people that have tried reprogramming their body with gene therapy and giving themselves hormones that are delivered by DNA. To me, that's a risk. I definitely wouldn't go there because these effects are irreversible. And if there was cancer-causing issue, then really you're not going to live longer, right?
There's scepticism among many in the mainstream scientific community around the role that biohackers can play in better understanding our biology. Do the risks of this self-experimentation outweigh the potential rewards? Or is there a middle ground that could help to push the boundaries of optimizing our health?
The idea of allowing for more use of experimental therapy under informed consent in a way that all data must be shared so that we as a community can learn from it. I think that's a really exciting idea.
Biohacking has become a global movement, and we are out there asking the hard questions and doing the things that a lot of scientists would like to do, but they're not allowed to do because we still have autonomy over our own bodies. And when we talk about our results, when we share them online, scientists see them and go, interesting. And then that provides fuel for studies.
The problem becomes when people start doing things which are not evidence-based, for which the information really just isn't out there. Then I think, obviously, as with anything else, it can get dangerous. If you don't have the information on which to base a decision to do something, but you go ahead and do it, that's risky by definition.
I think somewhere in between there is a happy intermediate. I'm a scientist, so I like to see what happens to my body when I do X, Y, or Z. But of course, I'm very careful. I measure what happens and make sure that I'm hopefully not doing myself any harm.
Many of those trying to hack the aging process are also interested in trying to optimize their immune systems. In fact, there are biohackers experimenting with procedures such as fecal transplants, taking someone else's poo as a medicine in an attempt to cure a range of ills. Though less extreme, supermarkets and pharmacy shelves are heaving with so-called immune-boosting pills and supplements. But is it even possible to alter how the body responds to disease through consuming someone else's poo or by eating a blueberry pill? And what are the risks?
The immune system is part of an interconnected system running all the way through our body, involving all our tissues, from our skin all the way through to our toes. And in fact, the gut has one of the largest resident populations of immune cells in our body.
Most of the body's immune cells are found in the lining of the intestine, and the microbes in our gut play a crucial role in keeping those immune cells of our body healthy.
They do that by providing the key chemical signals that they get once they digest the good foods that we eat. So a healthy gut microbiome is absolutely crucial to a healthy immune system.
The immune system is considered to be an organ. But unlike every other organ in your body, it's one where components of the system can migrate around the body. You don't expect that with cells from your lungs or your spleen or any other solid organ. But the beauty of the immune system is it has the property of immunosurveillance.
Immunological surveillance is when the cells of the immune system come together to coordinate a response to an external threat such as disease. For example, your lymph nodes, the glands that swell up when you are sick, are a sign of your immune system at work. We often hear messages encouraging us to boost our immune system. So, could we just take a pill to do that?
When you do meet an infectious threat, our immune response has to react quickly to contain the threat and eradicate it. And you don't want it to stay on, because if it stays on, it's damaging. And that is what happens in allergy and autoimmune disease, which are overreactivity of the immune response. So there is no wonder pill that's going to restore and boost one part of the immune response to help us be superpowered because it's also interconnected, and the risks of getting it wrong are really quite dramatic.
So, instead of boosting our immune system, we should focus on supporting it.
Everything that we know already, which is good for our health, will also benefit our immune system. More exercise, taking at regular intervals, has been shown to boost your immune function. That's been shown, and that's published data.
Unfortunately, the modern lifestyle is not very good for our immune system. Our diets of convenience foods and fatty foods that are low in fiber, alongside sedentary lifestyles with little exercise, high stress, and not too much sleep, too much screen time. All of these combine to make our immune response not work as it should.
Getting enough sleep and reducing stress can help our immune system operate at an optimal level. And even though one blueberry won't work miracles, getting a variety of the right foods is very important.
To help your immunity, you need to be feeding up your gut microbes. And the best way to do this is to make them more diverse, give them more species. And I recommend 30 different types of plant a week, which gives you all the fiber you should need. Secondly, you should pick plants to eat that are high in polyphenols. These are the chemicals that are naturally found in plants and are actually rocket fuel for your gut microbes. So things like brightly colored berries, strong flavors like coffee beans, dark chocolate, and even red wine contain polyphenols.
So if what you eat and your gut is so important for your immune system, why are some people transplanting other people's poo into their own stomachs?
A fecal microbial transplant, or colloquially a poo transplant, is taking a sample of a stool from a normal person and putting it into someone who's unwell. This has been done for several decades for very bad infections of the bowel, like Clostridium difficile, and it cures 90% of people. And it's been since started to be used in a number of other conditions.
This is a fascinating area of research, but definitely not to be tried at home, says Tim.
I think this is an exciting new form of therapy, but it's always best to do this within the confines of a medical clinic where things can be supervised and the risk of side effects or infection is extremely low. There are some people who take risks and do it at home, and those risks will be multiplied considerably. There's a lot of hype about fecal transplants, and you mustn't believe people who say that it works in everything, in everybody. It certainly doesn't, and there are many failures in clinical trials.
One of the ways we can effectively and safely manipulate our immune responses is through vaccination.
What a vaccine is doing is essentially giving you the parts of the germ that will stimulate the immune response without actually giving the full-blown infection. Another thing that we can do is actually try to switch the immune response off. For some diseases, we don't want a powerful immune response because that's what's causing the damage. This is exactly what's done in diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, or is also being investigated in infections like COVID.
The good news is, whilst there's no one magic pill we can take to optimise our immune response, the more scientists learn about how our immune system works, the more they can develop new drug treatments and therapies to combat a wide range of diseases.
The knowledge of science is actually leading to all sorts of wonderful new possibilities to help treat us and win the war against infection.
As well as optimising our bodies, many of us are also interested in boosting our brains. In fact, for centuries, people have looked for ways to increase their intelligence, concentration and creativity through nootropics, or cognitive enhancers. If you're currently sipping on a skinny latte, you're consuming a form of nootropic right now. Caffeine's a stimulant and famous for its ability to perk you up. But so-called smart drugs are gaining popularity. There's now a huge market for over-the-counter supplements which claim, with very little scientific evidence, to boost concentration and memory. Some people go even further and seek out prescription stimulants, such as modafinil, in a bid to improve performance at work or while studying. A 2017 study based on the Global Drug Survey, an anonymous questionnaire, showed that 30% of Americans had taken some kind of smart drug in the last 12 months. That was up from 20% in 2015. And they're not alone. Large increases were reported across Europe as well. But do these drugs actually work, and what are the risks? Hanneke de Uden is a cognitive neuroscientist at the Donders Institute for Brain Cognition and Behaviour at Radboud University. Her lab has been studying how the state of our brain's chemistry shapes how we act.
So modafinil is in a category of drugs classed as psychostimulants. Other examples are methylphenidate and, for example, amphetamine. And psychostimulants act generally in a way to enhance activity in your dopamine system.
Raised levels of a neurotransmitter called dopamine can stimulate signals in the parts of your brain associated with concentration and focus. It also helps to reduce hyperactive and impulsive behaviours. This is incredibly useful for people with ADHD, for example, but it's also finding its way, illegally, into the hands of those without a diagnosed medical condition.
In some recent studies, we've looked at how psychostimulants affect decision-making in a young, healthy population, so not patients who are taking these for treatment. Specifically, we studied methylphenidate. This is a drug that's maybe better known by the brand name Ritalin or Adderall. And what we found was that methylphenidate makes you better across a number of tasks. And we think that this might be the case because we experience these tasks as less kind of cognitively effortful.
But, says Hanneke, taking these brain-boosting drugs without a medical prescription is risky.
All medications have risk of side effects, and there's a reason that these are prescription drugs. So when we run a medication study, for example using psychostimulants, we really extensively screen our participants. We actually get a doctor to sign off on prescribing people even a single pill. We often give people only a single dose. We know, for example, that psychostimulants increase your heart rate, and this can pose a risk for people with underlying heart problems like arrhythmia that they may not even know about. Drugs don't affect everyone in the same way. Drugs will help some people really well, and they will not help others at all. And this is really the holy grail of psychiatry. It's been for decades probably. How can we predict what drugs work for whom?
Hanneke says there have been virtually no studies on the long-term cognitive effects of psychostimulant use in non-patients. But boosting the dopamine levels in the brain could cause long-term problems.
So I talked about this finely tuned balance of our brain chemistry. And when you disturb that system by adding a lot of dopamine, then the system may, in response, to try to regain that balance, tone down its sensitivity to dopamine. And so you could become dependent on taking the medication to kind of get to your normal levels of your system. And then finally, there's another risk, and this is maybe even more speculative, but I think also very important to think about, is that being really focused all the time is not necessarily the optimal state for all situations. We do know that being super focused may actually reduce our creativity and our openness to new ideas or out-of-the-box solutions. And so I think that we don't want a society of just hyper-focused people.
Rather than boosting your brain power through medication, there's growing evidence that it can be boosted through more natural means, namely meditation and mindfulness. So how does that work?
One consequence of being human is the fact that we have these minds that can kind of wander off and think about all kinds of weird stuff, right?
This is Laurie Santos. She's a professor of psychology at Yale and teaches a course called The Science of Wellbeing.
The research shows that the simple act of meditating, even like 10 minutes a day if you're a novice, can significantly reduce brain activation in regions of your brain that tend to mind wander. So it's literally changing the kind of default firing patterns of your brain just through this simple act of meditating.
So why is mind wandering not so good? Laurie says research shows that when our mind wanders, it can make us unhappy.
And the irony is that we're never fully present, right? And the enjoyment that we get out of simple actions in life, whether that's, eating something delicious or doing the dishes or talking with a friend, like we really need to be present for that to kind of kick in, right? We need to be there to savor it and notice it. And this means that this act of mind wandering seems to significantly decrease our well-being over time. And that's why practices like meditation can be so powerful. Meditation in a variety of different forms, at least one of the benefits is that it kind of trains our mind to be a little bit more present than is typical.
Not only does meditation stop the mind wandering, it also builds up more connections between parts of the brain. It effectively rewires your brain away from mind wandering and towards the present. And the effect lasts. According to a 2008 study, which found people who had practiced meditation were happier even 8 weeks later. Meditation doesn't just help us enjoy life. A 2013 study by the University of California showed that a course of meditation actually boosted test scores. It also has a host of other benefits, says Laurie.
It increases concentration. It increases our memory over time. It has lots of physical health consequences. You can see improvements in immune function after meditation and things like that. These kind of markers of aging, things like telomeres, like those kinds of markers seem to get better for people who regularly meditate.
So if there are signs that it aids your brain power, happiness, immune function, and even DNA, would it be too much to talk about meditation as some kind of remedy for the human condition?
Sometimes people talk about this question of, well, is meditation sort of a panacea? And honestly, as a scientist, we usually kind of get a little worried when we see things that have all these benefits, but meditation just seems to be one that, empirically speaking, just does have so many benefits.
So there you have it. It is possible to optimize our bodies and our brains. Whilst DIY fecal transplants and the use of non-prescribed psychostimulants are definitely not to be recommended, there are clearly other things that can help many of us, from vaccinations to meditation to regular old exercise. And even though living to 180 will probably not be attainable, or even desirable, as the scientific understanding of our bodies grows, the hope is that many of us will be able to look forward to longer, healthier, and happier lives in the future. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, be sure to check out these videos next. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to get a notification each time we upload a new video.